Now this is the header pipe assembly, and on this bike there's two crossover pipes, one where the traditional single crossover pipe goes, which is underneath the front engine cover, and then the second one goes across behind the back of the transmission. And this pipe has a little cutout on this side, that is, the right pipe does. So a pretty straightforward exhaust piping system. Now you'll notice that the two crossover pipes are a different length. The front crossover is the longer one, and the rear crossover is the shorter one. This is the hardware for mounting the header pipes of the exhaust system. These are the big aluminum nuts that secure the header pipe into the head. And there's two steel rings, a larger one with a flat back and square shoulder, and then an interior bevel, and then a smaller ring which also has a flat face, but it's split, and a bevel. And the way they fit is the big ring and the flat side go into the nut, and then the two bevels meet and fit like that, with the exhaust pipe in the middle here. Now as you tighten up the nut, the split closes up and gives a gas-tight seal to keep exhaust from leaking out of the pipe. Now the header pipes are hung with brackets, but they're different on the left and the right. And this one's marked L and this one's marked R. Now there's one other difference on my bike, because I'm going to be using a Brown's side stand. And the front mount uses a special bolt and nut that go together on the left hanger. So the pipe is going to be here, and then the Brown side stand front mount is going to go through there. So the hanger is really hanging off of the Brown side stand. And then the rear mount for the Brown side stand, which is here, that's the rear engine stud that secures it. Now there are crossover pipes, and on this bike there are two, and they have a pinch clamp and an Allan bolt that gets secured with a nut and a wave washer. So they crimp closed to give a gas-tight seal on the header pipes. So these are the new mufflers I got from Euromoto Electrics also. They come with the rear bracket already welded on, and then these are the clamps that are used to attach the muffler to the exhaust header pipes on this end. These come with inserts to swedge down the size of the muffler to fit the 38mm exhaust pipes on this bike. So before I install the header pipe, I test fit the muffler. And that's a good idea, because usually that insert needs to be expanded out just a little bit. So now I can get the pipe on the muffler very easily. Now, before I install the nut, I put some anti-seize on these threads because they are prone to seizing up, and I don't want that to happen. Now I have the left pipe, and I have the nut on it, and I have the two rings. So the flat face of the big ring goes inside the nut, and then the bevel face of the little ring faces the bevel inside the nut, and then it just slides in the spigot and just comes up like that. Now what I like to do, since I put new anti-seize in there, is I'll spin the nut on and off a couple of times just to get the anti-seize nicely distributed over the threads. And I'm going to leave this sort of finger tight for now until I get the other header pipe on and the cross pipes on. Now to install the crossover pipe, I slid it all the way over to this side and then lined this pipe up by swinging it so it would slide, or I shouldn't say slide, but come up even with the pipe, and then pulled it across until it got about halfway, and then ran in the stainless steel pinch bolts. But I did put a little anti-seize on those threads because these are stainless hardware. This is the rear crossover, and I did it the same way. I pushed the pipe all the way over that way onto the stub, and as I lined up the front, I came back and got the pipe here just started, and then the front just started, so that they would slide on. And the same deal here, they have stainless pinch bolt hardware, so there's a little anti-seize on the threads. Now the hanger bracket, you just spread the clamp open and slide it over the pipe. And then, as I said, this is the Brown's side stand front nut and special hardware. And in order to get that to go together, I had to use a set of vice grips to pinch the clamp closed. Then I could get the nut in and tighten it up a couple of turns from the back bolt to hold it together. So I have the Brown's side stand mounted. And the nice thing about that is you can see the side stand because it's not obscured by the cylinders or the fairing. So it's a nice upgrade for this style bike. On the right side hanger bracket, it goes on the rear engine stud. And so I splayed it open and pushed it over the pipe. And then I'll take a set of pliers to squeeze it back together and then put the nut and washer on to secure that hanger. Now on the right side, I've got the hanger mounted, and again, this is the same stud for the rear engine stud that the Brown's side stand's mounted on the other side of the bike. So I've got that on with the washer. So I have the mufflers mounted on the header pipes. And to do that, I left all of the fittings on the headers loose so I could orient the muffler and get it to slide onto the header pipe, and then also get it to line up with the muffler bracket mounts on the rear of the frame. So this is the rear of the frame where the rear foot peg mounts, and then this bracket is where the muffler bracket mounts. And the muffler bracket mounts from the bottom with a couple of Allans, a big flat washer, and then a wave washer underneath to secure the bolts. Now the clamp goes here between the muffler and the header pipe to secure them, and I tighten that down so that it's a tight seal and there won't be an exhaust leak. I kind of like to orient the bolt down underneath the muffler out of the visual line of sight, so the band is just kind of a clean line between the muffler and the header, but that's just my personal preference. So after I got the mufflers mounted on the brackets, I came back and tightened up the crossover pipes, making sure they're about centered on the front crossover and on the rear crossover. Then I tightened up the nut here on the rear engine stud and torqued it to 55 foot-pounds, and then tightened up the other nut here on the front of the bracket to secure the hanger. Now, one of the things that happened is the Brown side stand was touching the exhaust pipe, and what I found was a quick fix for that problem is I put a M6 flat washer in here, and that creates enough gap that the side stand's not touching the muffler anymore, and it's captive. It doesn't want to come out, so I didn't even have to use any glue or anything to keep that in place. It's just going to stay there, because when the side stand's retracted, it squeezes up against the nut here, against the bracket. So that's a quick fix for getting the side stand to stay off the muffler. Now, to tighten up the exhaust header nut, I use a special wrench. This one's provided by BMW, but there's others that'll do the job, and you can find them at places like Euromoto Electrics. The little teeth fit in the spaces in the nut. There we go. And then I just tighten up the nut and I lean on the wrench. I don't get too ruthless, but I make sure it's nice and snug. And then that crimps down the split ring inside the header nut to seal the exhaust pipe. That raises a question, which is, should I have waited to install the header pipe until I had the lower fairing panel on? Because the panel fits over the cylinder and the pipe, and you can't really install it with the pipe in the way. Well, the answer to that is it's okay on the later model bikes to go ahead and put the pipe in first, because the panel is made with a split and you can separate two pieces of the panel, slide it over the pipe, and then they come together and they mount down here, one side and the other on the bracket. So BMW designed the later panels so they could be removed without having to remove the exhaust. Now, the early versions of the panel weren't built that way. They were solid. So you actually did have to wait to put the header pipe in until you had the lower panel mounted. And if you wanted to take that panel off, you had to remove the exhaust system. So the newer version's a lot nicer. So here's the brand new exhaust system installed on the bike. And I think it looks very nice. And once again, this is starting to look much more like a motorcycle. I still have the carburetors and airbox to install and the timing to be set. And of course, all the fairing panels and parts need to go on.